Hi everyone, Dr. Chelsea Haig with Positive Parenthood, and you are about to listen to a webinar on big feelings. We are going to talk about co-regulation. We are going to discuss the positive parenthood approach to navigating and dealing with big feelings. I hope you enjoy it, and I also really hope that you will please excuse the many times I say okay? Yeah, there you go. There's another one. I just listened back to part of it and there are a lot of ums. It's live recorded, so I hope you enjoy it and excuse the ums. I'm Dr. Chelsea Haig. I run Positive Parenthood with my mom, Dr. Robin Haig, who unfortunately is not feeling well today, and so won't be able to join us. So sorry. I've got a sitter with my little ones. So let's talk about what big feelings are and how to stay connected. So big feelings are really just any time that a child is experiencing a lot of challenge in their relationship with a parent or with something else in their environment. So for a lot of people, that might look like aggression. It might look like throwing or hitting or crying. It might look like refusing to do something. And I want to say that's really a normal part of human development. And we all have feelings like that. Like adults have feelings like that too. And the goal is for both us as adults and for our children to be able to manage and navigate across all of those emotions. We tend to start getting concerned when our kiddos don't have big emotions, right? So that's a point of worry, a point of concern. So if you have printed out the worksheet that I emailed to you this morning, we're just starting with a very top box where we talk about what big feelings are. It's a normal part of human development, but it is also a part that is really challenging. So the reason it's really challenging is because with our children, we co-regulate. So that means we're hardwired to take on each other's feelings. And actually all humans co-regulate with each other, but children are especially attuned to take on the feelings of the closest adult. So for most of us, that's our parents. It also might be a teacher or an older sibling, grandma, grandpa, caregiver. We're co-regulating. So when a child has an upset, they're looking to their, to the closest adult in order to learn how to navigate that emotion. What happens a lot of times is that our child starts to get dysregulated, stressed out, big feeling, crying, aggression, any of those kinds of behaviors, running, hiding, whatever it is. And it activates something in us because we're co-regulating with them. We're taking on their feelings, right? And it's frustrating. It's hard when your child is fighting back with you or having a tricky time. And so then we start to get activated. And one of the things that we teach at Positive Parenthood is that an uncalm adult has no capacity to calm down a child who's having a big feeling. Okay, so when you think about that co-regulation cycle, if the adult is really activated and the child is really activated and they're sharing those feelings, there's no calm coming for either of them. Okay, so they get into a co-regulating and co-escalating cycle where they just share the negative feelings. So let me tell you what this sometimes will look like in my home. So one of my daughters really loves Hatchimals. She plays with them in the morning a lot. In the morning, it's typically a hard time for us. I'm like running around doing a million things. My other kids are occupied, and I want everybody to get their shoes on. So I tell them again and again and again, get your shoes on. The other two get their shoes on and get their backpacks ready, and they're ready to go. They're following the directions. But the third one sits in the corner and plays with the Hatchimals. Meanwhile, I'm becoming very activated and stressed. And every time I ask her and she doesn't do it, I get more stressed. Okay, so side note, the more we ask our children to do something, the less likely they are to do it, paradoxically, right? So the more we ask them to do something, the less likely they are to do it. So I've got to switch a couple things around, but I actually can't help her move her through this if I'm not calm. So what actually happens is I have all of these tricky feelings happening for myself. I'm thinking about traffic. I'm thinking about being late. I'm thinking about how she's not following my directions. I'm activated. And finally, I take her by the hand and I'm like, get your shoes on. Let's go. I get her out to the car and she was calm. I share all of my big feeling with her. Now she's also having a big feeling and we start to go into a co-escalating cycle. So what to do to break it, right? How do I move her through that transition or move her through that moment? And the first thing is always that the adult needs to calm themselves down. Okay, so that can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Some people love breathing exercises. Some people take a minute to do yoga. Some people go into the bathroom and lock themselves in the bathroom for a few minutes. Whatever it is, I've got to get to a place where I'm calm. Now, a few hacks that we use a lot at Positive Parenthood. The first one is walk like you're walking in concrete. Okay, so like super slow, like quicksand, right? So you're sinking, you have to move really slow because your body's really heavy. Moving slow like that sends really calming transmissions to your brain. And that'll help you calm down. Okay, so it's like a little hack to get around when you're having a hard time. Okay, so and once you're calm, you're going to approach your child, and this is really, really good for a child who is using for whom relevancy is important. A child who's using their brain in such a way that it's important for them to know that you understand what's going on for them. So a lot of kids are like that, right? They feel really deeply misunderstood, and you might be able to remember that for yourself, like being a kid and feeling like nobody gets it. So that's like a relevancy thing. So this particular tool, when you're dealing with a big feeling, um, allows the child for allows the child to know that they are relevant and salient in your environment. Okay, so you're going to help them co-regulate, calm down by helping them know that you got them. You know what's happening. You're there with them, and you're going to move through the emotion. Okay. So I will give you just an example in just a minute of how I've recently used the 3 yeses. So this is highlighted in purple in that workshop or on that worksheet. The 3 yeses are a way for you to communicate to your child by acknowledging their feelings. Okay, so a lot of times kids get upset about stuff, and we're like, you shouldn't be upset about that. You shouldn't be throwing your backpack because you messed up your homework. You shouldn't be hating your sister because I didn't give you a purple cup. Whatever it is, it's like, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not appropriate. And that is true. You can't do that. It's not appropriate. And also, that's the kind of the should is really breaks the connection that you have with your child. And since our kids' brains are developing, they really need us to help them co-regulate and model how to calm down and how to stay calm, how to be with these really tricky feelings. Because the truth of the matter is, like, as we go through life, we're going to have to navigate across a range of emotions, right? So the 3 S's offer you a structure for doing that, a structure for talking about big feelings, and it allows the child to feel felt, which supports increased cooperation. So we know from a lot of research that when a child feels felt, like we got them, we can feel it, their capacity to cooperate skyrockets. And that's what we want. We want your children, I want my children to be able to cooperate with me more of the time. Now, they're kids. They're not going to be able to cooperate all of the time because they're little. So let's talk about the 3 yeses. And I'm going to give you an example. We were just in Mexico. That's where my husband's family is from. And when we were in Mexico, my in-laws have these cups, and they're plastic cups, and they have a built-in straw. And there's 2 of these cups. Okay, I got 3 little kids, and they were so coveted. So this one morning, the 2 children got the cups, and then the third child didn't get the cup with the straw. And she was really upset about it. Okay. But the fact of the matter is there's only 2 of these cups. So she's crying, and I'm starting to feel like, oh gosh, my in-laws are judging me. My child is having a tantrum because she didn't get the cup with the straw. I'm starting to get really concerned. And so I'm starting to worry about this. And before I even deal with her, I just want you to notice that before I even intervene in this wailing child about the straw cup situation, I'm already putting my feelings onto her about how I feel about the situation. Okay, so I'm like, she shouldn't be upset about this cup. Everybody's probably judging me that she's upset, all of this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to cut that. And I took her onto my lap, so she's 4. But this is also a tool that works with teenagers. And I'm going to just ask her 3 questions to which she can answer yes from her perspective. Okay, so in the scenario, I would be asking questions like, you really want that cup, huh? Okay, so she can say yes. Okay, you're kind of frustrated that your sister has both of those cups. Your sisters have both of those cups. Yeah. Okay, so she's gonna say yes, yes. And then maybe it's really hard to wait, isn't it? Okay. So you can come up with a string of questions, right? But what you're really trying to do is just ask 3 questions to which they can answer yes. Now, this is not going to fix the big feeling. This is going to help them navigate the big feeling. Okay. So that's what we want because we are going to have big feelings. I just was in a work situation today where there was big feelings. And what we want is for the children to be able to navigate the big feeling. So it didn't fix the fact that she didn't have the straw cup. But it did give her the capacity to sit on my lap with me and feel felt and wait for the cup. Okay, so she stopped having these big, giant tears. She stopped, she was hitting her sister, so she stopped hitting her sister. I was the thing that was most salient in her environment. I held her really close and I gave her the 3 questions. She responded yes. That enabled her to wait. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing with the 3 yeses. We're trying to really help our children express, give words to their emotions so that they can deal with them. Okay, so that they can process them and so that they can do that processing inside of the relationship. So, positive parenthood is all about how to use the relationship, build the relationship with your child, and then use that relationship in order to really get your child to cooperate more of the time with you. So, it's not going to work all the time. It doesn't work all the time for adults. Let's talk about what the 3 yeses might look like, sort of like in a teen kind of situation. Okay. So, if you guys want to just drop in the comments or in the chat how old your kids are, that would be super helpful. So if you think about a teenager, we just had a family in our teen class where they had gone on family vacation up to Tahoe. Okay, so a Bay Area family up to Tahoe, and the teenager is super sullen. Okay, so she doesn't want to be there. She wants to be with her friends. She blended family, so they're with the other set of grandparents, all kinds of stuff about how she doesn't want to be there. She just wants to be there on her phone. Great. So we've got 7, 5, 10, and 12 on the call. And then Liza, I know you're listening with 8 and 9. So she really doesn't want to be there. And the parents were really angry that she was acting this way because the grandparents had paid for this trip. And now we have this really sullen teenager who's making it hard for everybody to have a fun time because she's radiating out this negative energy about not wanting to be there and mad about her phone. And mom wants to disconnect the internet, so she has to come hang out, and she's just really angry. So instead of getting mad at her, so most of us, what we want to do in this kind of situation is say, like, this is not appropriate behavior. You have to stop right now. Let's move through. Okay, so we're going to drop the shoulds because she's not enjoying herself. She's not behaving the way we want her to. So we're going to accept that at face value, and then we're just going to come up with 3 questions to help her feel felt. So those questions might be something like, you really wish your friends were here. You're counting the days till we go home. And it might be hard to do this. So this is the thing about calming ourselves down, right? And like having the structure for ourselves so that we can then move into this relationship, because it's not easy to move into your teenager's perspective, especially if you feel like they should be doing something else. Okay, so it feels boring to play board games. Like you really don't want to go skiing with us tomorrow, whatever it is, so that they can answer from their perspective, yes, yes, and yes. So thinking about the 3 yeses and big feelings, I really want you to think about this tool as a tool to increase regulation for your child. So that means that through using the tool, you're not trying to solve the problem that caused the big feeling. You're just trying to stay connected through the feeling so that the child learns, A, how to navigate the feeling, and B, that the child is worthy of your connection regardless of how they're feeling. So one of the things we know from so much research and also so much work with children and families is that oftentimes when we break the connection, what happens is that the child learns that they're not worthy of your attention and your connection unless they're being good. Okay. So this is not good, right? Because we want them to feel like, you know, I'm here, I've got you, and I am going to be present with you through this emotion. Like, you still deserve me. One of the things too that we talk about so much at Positive Parenthood, like one of our first tools that parents learn is praise. Okay. So the highest form of praise is presence, right? So praise is one of the tools that both through our practice and through our research, we've seen to be the most powerful tool in figuring out how to guide cooperation, decrease behaviors, and really increase your child's capacity to do what it is, more of what it is that you're asking them to do. So regardless of ability, we see this with families with kids with special needs, with kids who are just having big behaviors, with kids who are sometimes like going through a rough moment or a rough time, whatever it is, we see that praise is really, really key. And oftentimes we talk about it as the ground that your parenting walks on, right? So if you think about the ground that is beneath you as a parent, it needs to be nurtured and tended to. And the way to do that is with praise. Okay, so really, really being consistent with the praise. And the highest form of praise is presence. Okay, so that's really being present with and noticing what's going on with your child, and just noticing, affirming, being there. The three yeses is kind of like a frame, it's a way to get really present, especially when things are challenging. And so I really want to encourage you to do that. And something that I find to be really, really useful is for you to practice by thinking about the last time that your child or your teen was really frustrated, angry, mad, upset, sullen about something. So maybe that was just this afternoon. Take a second and think about what that moment was. And I would love, you can shoot me a chat, and let me know what the situation was, and maybe what would three yes questions have been, and what would have been some of the barriers for you in getting to a place yourself where you could use the three yeses. So parents have all kinds of barriers to being able to stay connected and use the three yeses, right? And most of the time, our barriers are ourselves. It's our own capacity to withstand something that's really, really challenging or that's really activating for us. And so then it's like, okay, so what do you need to do to get present? What do you need? You might need like 30 seconds. You might need a glass of water. You might need to sing yourself that one line of the song. But I think that what we know is that our children, if you're going to use this kind of parenting style, the thing that our children need the most is connection. And it's paradoxical, right? Because when kids are having big feelings, it's really hard for the parent. Okay, so it's often hard for the child too. But when kids are having big feelings, what they need is an adult with whom to co-regulate. And we just see that again and again in the research, that as their brains are developing, they're learning how to regulate themselves so that they can move across these scenarios. And when they are having a big feeling, they're dysregulated. Okay. And when you're dysregulated, you don't have the capacity to use your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, your ability to make a judgment about a situation, to engage with lots of language. And when you don't have access to that rational part of your brain, you start responding from the part of your brain that keeps you safe, like literally physically safe also. And that's when you get these kinds of big stress behaviors. Okay, so let's talk about the example of a child who wants something that parent won't buy. So this is something that can happen when you're, like my kids know about Amazon. They want me to go on Amazon and buy stuff for them. We've got a parent here sharing that child wanted a toy, gets really upset. I see this happen in grocery stores and at Target all the time too. It happens to me also. where the child wants something, we say no, and then the child shoves or hits, gets physical, uses big words, like whatever it is. Um, and what we don't want to do, like something I think that is really important here is what we don't want to do is give in, like let the child then have the toy. Okay, so if child we say no, and now child is shoving mom, the child is not going to have the toy. So we're going to hold the boundary, but we're going to stay connected. So let's think about 3 words or 3 questions that could be used in that scenario. So child really wants something online. Okay, so you really wanted that puzzle. Yes. Okay, and that might be hard to say when child is pushing you, but remember, we're just trying to build capacity to withstand not getting what you want all the time. So 3 questions. You really want that puzzle. You really don't want to wait. Okay, so another thing I want to say is that as you ask these 3 questions and the child moves into regulation, like it may be a time to sit with them and try to come up with what else to do. So it's like, we said no. And you might just have to sit quietly. So what else could we do? And you might have to wait. If the child is having a big feeling, you're going to say, I'll wait. If the child is physically aggressing on you, you're going to move your body away, or you're going to tag out to another parent. If that's possible. Sometimes you're the only parent around. So I think other examples that people are sharing are examples of kids not doing the things that they have to do sort of on a daily basis. Okay, so and really that is like, shopping is a thing that many children have to do at least once a week, probably not daily, but so if your child isn't doing something that they have to do, so we really want to build in routines. And when you want to do the 3 yeses. Then we want to build in routines around those things that kids are doing on a daily basis. So like first we do this, and it's okay to say I'll wait, and I am going to say that it might take a while. Like you might have to connect with the child and be there through the tricky moment. I think we have a really famous story of one time in a coaching session where it was a younger child, I think 8 or 9, didn't want to get into the bathtub. And it was like, okay, so we've got 2 choices. And we said to the parents, okay, so we're going to either be with this child who's really having big feelings about not wanting to get in the bathtub for the long haul, or they're going to have the big feeling. And if you're going to give in, we need to do it immediately, because what we don't want is the kid to learn that if he continues or she continues with the big feeling, then they're going to get what they want. And so I think we sat on the floor with this child for like 4 hours, and we just said, I'll wait. I see you're mad, like not engaging. So you might have to do that a couple of times. I'll wait. Okay. You're going to position yourself. So with this child, you're going to position yourself so that you're blocking the door. So we sat against the door and we just waited. Okay. We're going to cut the words, because when a child is having really big feelings like that, they don't have the capacity to make sense of language. Okay. And as you do that, then maybe it's going to be 20 minutes the next, so 4 hours, and 20 minutes the next night, then 2 minutes. And it's going to get shorter and shorter, but you have to really firmly stay connected and hold the boundary. Yeah, so I think when a child is having a big feeling like that, regardless sort of the situation that you are in, we want to really reinforce what the child is doing that is correct. Okay, so like what is it that's right? And you have to work really hard to do this when a child is having a big feeling, because they're often doing things that are destructive, hitting somebody else, breaking things, stuff that they're not allowed to do. So that's where this thing about presence comes in, right? And we noticing before, we're trying to catch it before, like we're trying to catch the child starting the correct behavior before they move into the destructive behavior. So if that's like child is throwing a fit about wanting to put their shoes on, taking one step towards the shoe, basket or towards where they need to go to put the shoes on, then we're going to praise that one step. And we're going to do it so neutrally with a smile on our face, even though we're really activated. I see you're coming over to do this. Okay. I will say that I think that when you're using this kind of parenting style, planned ignoring is a technique that we have people use if a child is moving into aggression and you've missed it. Because of course we're going to miss things sometimes, right? So sometimes a child is going to move into aggression or move into pushing or swearing or whatever it is. But planned ignoring is something that you are using only 2% of the time. So this is the thing about the ground your parenting stands on. And oftentimes I tell people that we don't want to start with the trickiest moment. So we're not going to start with like the shower or getting into the bath or the shower if that's a really hard place. And we're not going to start with negotiating what toy you get to pick off of Amazon or what you get at Target if that's a really tricky spot. We're going to try to nourish the other ground, so that you really reinforce the relationship that you have with the child, so that when that situation comes up again in the future, you have nourished this enough that you can catch it before it gets that tricky again. Okay, so it's a big shift in thinking about how we are parenting. I know for me, when I started doing this way of parenting, I had to make some big mental shifts in my mind about the kind of parent that I am and how I respond to situations. So if we're just constantly reacting and reactive, react to the stuff that our kids are doing, it's hard. And stopping doing that it can be a challenge. So when you let go of some of these tools, like taking away privileges or time out, or now you can't have ice cream, or like whatever it is that is in your family, sort of the go-to. For me, it was taking privileges away. It can feel like, what am I supposed to do now that this child is like, doing whatever they're doing and I don't have any tools? And we're really trying to shift the language. So one thing that we want to do is we want to tell a child in that situation what they are supposed to do. So this is another thing I think that can be really hard to do. And it seems so simple, but it takes a lot of practice to make a shift in your language. So we want to give the child the pro-social behavior. So what that means is that we want to tell the child, because remember, when they're shoving or pushing or refusing, they do not have access to their prefrontal cortex, or they have very diminished access to their prefrontal cortex. And so we want to reduce the number of words. Okay, so it's not a time during the shoving to talk about why you don't shove. It's not a time to do this kind of like moralizing where we want to teach a lesson, because they're not going to get it. It's a time to just give the pro-social behavior and to stay connected. So it might be like hands on my own body is what I would say if a child was hurting, like hitting a sister, hitting a parent, hands on their own body. Okay, so now there's no question where hands go in our pockets. If a child is like I have a sort of persistent situation where one of my kids gets frustrated at dinner and then will want to throw things. So there's two things that I'm going to do in that situation. I'm going to remove the stuff that she could throw, one, and then I'm going to tell her plates stay on the table. And I'm only going to say it once. Because remember, like the more times you tell a child what to do, the less likely they are to do it. So I'm going to say it once. The second time, I'm going to help her do it. So that's either going to be, but remember, I'm only doing this if I'm like perfectly regulated, happy, calm myself. So that may be moving the plate away from her. It may be, if she's aggressing on me, it may be moving my body away from her. So you're going to give them the pro-social behavior. So a lot of times, I think many of us, this is what I was saying about language, will tell kids what not to do. Don't throw your plate. Don't hit your sister. Stop hitting mom. We give the sort of negative direction because that's how our minds work. There's like a negative stimuli, right? And that's the most salient thing. And so that's what we respond to. And we're trying to flip that. So instead of telling our kids what not to do, we're going to tell them what to do. So a child who's under stress, and this is even more true for a child who has any kind of delays or special need or language delay, when you say, don't hit mama or whatever, don't throw your plate or stop fighting with your sister, the most salient thing that you're saying is the end of the sentence. Okay. So they're going to catch, because they're under stress, remember? So they're going to catch the last part of your sentence. And so what they're hearing then is hit your sister. Don't hit your sister. They hear the hit your sister. Stop pushing mama. And they're hearing pushing mama. Okay. So we want them to hear, since we know they're under stress, we want them to hear the positive direction of what they were supposed to do. So the thing that we want them to do. So it kind of can take a minute, right, to sort of figure out what those things are and start really shifting your language. But like one we use a lot in our family is hands on our own body or hands in our pockets. Okay, so hands in our own body, but if that's not enough for your child, then it might need to be hands in your pockets, like a place where they are going. And we really want to try to stay connected. So then when that situation calms down, we're going to let it go. Okay, so if you're anything like me, I have a tendency to want to help my child learn from some of these scenarios. When you're shifting your parenting style, it's just like not the time, because we want them to learn from the positive situations. So we want them to do more of the stuff they're doing right and less of the stuff they're doing wrong. Okay, so we're going to let it go, and then we're going to spend the rest of the day really nurturing, reinforcing, focusing on the things that are going right. And sometimes we say like praise the shards, and what we mean by that is you're just looking for like the very first little itty bitty piece that is going to really notice and reinforce what's happening that's correct. Okay, so that is useful, that is going well, that is easy. That's what you're really wanting to focus on. So, like my kids have a really hard time waiting. Okay, I think most kids have a hard time waiting. And if we're like waiting, like the other day we were at the doctor's office, there's a line to give them the cards, we could register. My kids are getting real antsy. I want to catch them before they start to get antsy and whiny, and just say, like, I noticed you're really waiting. Wow, you're doing a great job of waiting. Now, for older kids and for some younger kids, that kind of noticing needs to be sort of soft and quiet. And other kids, you like really, you're doing an amazing job. So you have to sort of modulate yourself to your child to know that kind of noticing. But sometimes it's just like being a sportscaster and like narrating what's happening. I also want to say that this style of parenting is it's so much more intensive than probably what most of us were raised with and what most of us are doing right now or see around us. Okay, so I also want to say that, a lot of people do what we call good enough parenting. Not what we call, that's like a style of parenting. And good enough parenting is the idea that no matter what you do, your kid's probably going to be okay. They're going to grow up. It's going to be good enough, right? And so sometimes you're connected, or like sometimes it might not work, or it might be really frustrating, but it's good enough. And for a lot of families, that works. Okay. But it doesn't work for every single family. So it doesn't work like if you have a really spirited child or a child who has, just like part of their personality that they might need more. You might have a child that has some language delay and they might need more support. You might be like me, I have 3 kids really close in age. And it may be that if I had them more spaced out or separately, good enough parenting might have worked. So I'm not going to judge the fact that good enough parenting didn't work for me. I'm just saying, like, for some families, good enough parenting isn't good enough. Like for some families, it's not. And that's when we want to really reinforce this relationship-based piece, so that you are focusing on attuning to your child and really nurturing them. So that, like I suspect, I know, I promise, I know that if you focus on building the relationship in places where it's like you could try with the 3 S's around something that's like, if like you have a scale of 1 to 10, that's like level 4 hardness. Okay. So Try it and see how it works. And then once you get that little thing worked out, like once you get the asking for the toy worked out, I also want to say about asking for the toy, something that I had a parent do recently that really worked really well. And this goes right in with the 3 yeses around a toy was like, okay, you're going to ask your 3 yeses. And then how about we take a picture of that toy so we remember? Take a picture of it. Take a picture of your screen if you're on your computer. But taking a picture of the toy so that you can remember what it was for when it is time to get a toy is a way to attune to your child. It's a way to be present and say like, hey, I'm right there with you. I see you. I hear you. You want the toy. It's hard when you don't get a toy. Like, that's hard. I mean, it's hard for adults, I think, sometimes when we don't get the stuff we want. And so how do we help them know what to do with that feeling that is not aggression, that is not hitting, that is not having a big giant tantrum, and making it really, really hard for everybody. So taking a picture of that. And like with all of these tools, I think it's something that's really important is starting in a place where it's not super heated. Okay. And building that up. So if there is a particular moment like bathroom or homework or whatever it is where you're consistently experiencing challenge, try it. Like, just a little bit of challenge, like a 3 or 4 out of a 10 or 5. And as you work on reducing those, you can move up, right? So in addition, we talked about the 3 yeses. Another thing that we talked about that was really important is giving the pro-social behavior. So that's the behavior that you want the child to do. So you will know this starts working when your kids start repeating back to you whatever it is that you're saying to them. So if if it's hands on your own body or one that I love for whining is regular voice. When children start saying that back to you, you know that it's gotten into their system and they can modulate themselves back. Another thing that often works really, really well for children who are trying to navigate through a big feeling and trying to ask for something. So a child who's maybe having a big feeling, who's asking for water at dinner, for example, and they say it, just in a way that is not appropriate and to which you don't want to respond as a parent because you don't want to reinforce that sort of tone. Is recasting. So just saying it, we're not going to say that's a rude voice or don't talk to me that way or anything like that. Just like your water, please. And the child should repeat back the way that you've said it. So now she's asked rudely, whatever she did, for water. So I'm going to say water, please. And I'm just looking for a little bit, okay? Little bit better. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect because it takes time. So you're just looking for like 5-10% improvement on this particular, in that particular moment, right? So if she says it a little bit better, a little bit closer to how I said it, I'm going to get out of the water. And I might notice for her, yeah, that was hard. And then the next day, I'm going to do it again. So we're building consistency around the positive, just sort of a positive feeling and presence. I think the presence piece is really the hardest part. Something that really helps me and my husband when our kids are having really tricky feelings. And I will say we've got 3 and a niece. We have a niece who's 19 we've had for the past 5 years or so. And then we've got 3 little ones. And something that really helps us is just reminding each other this is stress behavior and they really need us right now. Okay. So she really needs me. This is stress behavior and she really needs me. And then, doing what we can to connect. And sometimes it can feel embarrassing if you're in public, or it can feel stressful if you're at home, or like it's going to make you late, or like you're not getting the stuff done, or like the child shouldn't be behaving this way. And we have just really been focusing on getting rid of the shoulds, okay? Because the fact of the matter is the child is behaving that way. So what they're telling us with that tricky behavior is that they do not yet have the capacity to behave in a bit different way, because kids are really doing the best they can. And if they are not able to withstand not getting a toy, or not able to ask kindly for water, or not able to get in the shower or do routines that they have to get backpack packed or lunch in the backpack or whatever it is, clean room, what they're telling us is that they need us to offer some more support around that. So support can look like the 3 yeses. For some kids, around daily routine, support can look um, like a picture, here's all, or a checklist, different kinds of support. Support for younger children can be melodic intonation. So that's that kind of sing-songy voice that we hear people use with little ones. And with older kids too, this works. And I think a really good example is summer camps. Summer camps have a lot of chants and rhythmic stuff happening that helps kids know what's going to happen. And so building that into your life, those kind of sing-songy routines or rhythmic routines, so that when the child hears that, they know what's coming next, okay? So like one we have in our houses when we're closing things out, it's like, 1 more minute. We always say it like that. And all of the caregivers say it that way. So getting on the same page with your people that you're co-parenting or raising your kiddos with, and really thinking about like, what are the practices that we want to put into place, and how can we do that sort of together? So there is some time for questions or comments or other situations people want to discuss. And I will say that we have another course launching, a couple of courses launching in February. We've got a big kids and teens class. We have a general class, which is the one we've been teaching forever. These are 12-week classes. They are great. They are really useful for families who really want to delve into their parenting and get some really concrete strategies. Something that I think is really, really useful about these classes is that when families are invited every week to take short videos of themselves and their kids working on the tools or dealing with a tricky moment. And we watch those videos as a group. And you get really uber specific feedback around like, what are the small tweaks? Okay, so we're going to notice with you, and it's always so much easier to see other people's videos, what's going on. And you'll see families that are just like yours having similar situations, or families that are different than yours having similar situations. And we're going to find the small tweaks that we can make. So like, what can we say to the child before they start to melt down about not getting the toy so that they are there? Yes. So as you build your parenting this way, their capacity to cooperate is going to increase. And I see this happen pretty much 100% across the board with families that come through the entire class. Sometimes it takes a while. I would say most families experience some pretty significant relief within 2 weeks of working with us. But it's a practice, right? You have to practice. And I think that having the community is really important, and also having the really specific to your child, because, we talk about different kids, and it is really true. We've got 24 tools, and like, they're not all going to work for your child, and they're not all going to work for your child every day or in every situation. So part of the deal is getting enough relationship-based tools in your toolbox that you can make an assessment, and often it's a split-second assessment about what your child needs in order to cooperate. And it's also like that thing about the ground your parenting stands on. And almost always we have a lot of families who take the class many times or do coaching after the class. A lot of times when families come back to the course after a while, or do coaching after a while, what we see that has fallen out is the praise. And so, that's why it's the first tool, right? So as they're like, oh, right, I need to praise my child. And I will say that I've even had this experience the other day. I was with my kids, and they'd had a really hard couple of days, and they were helping me mop the floor. And I was like on towels on my feet, and they had little wipes underneath their feet, and we were just sort of like skating around the kitchen floor. And I decided I'm going to just praise them. I'm not going to do anything else but praise them. So I started praising them, and I realized, and they were helping me, and it was actually helpful help. And I realized in those 20 minutes that we spent doing the flow like that, that that had fallen out for me. And a lot of the behaviors that my children were experiencing was because they weren't getting the positive reinforcement and noticing on my part that they need in order to feel nourished and important and like I'm there for them. And there's just nothing, like it's so important for children to know that they are important enough to get your time and to get your attention. Um, I will say that there are also brain systems that we look at in the class. So we look at different brain systems in order to sort of identify what your child is going to respond most to. So some kids are really, really responsive to sensory kind of stuff, and they need sensory sort of support. Some kids are like really dysregulated. Some kids do really well if they feel relevant to their parent. And it depends some kids are like executive functioning kids, and they need to know the sort of like the order of operations. So it depends where your child is, like what system they tend to the most. And it also depends, like all kids move across the system. So it depends where they are. So we really work on trying to identify what's happening for the child and what they need in order to cooperate. That's a great question about praise. Let's just talk really briefly about praise. So we know that in order for praise to work, it needs to be done correctly. So I love the question about what do you mean by praise? So here's what I mean by praise. I mean being so attuned to your child that you are able to notice what's going on, and there's a specific kind of praise you're going to give. So you want to praise effort. Okay. So if you probably have come across or seen, like in schools, the stuff about growth mindset, Carol Dweck's work. And what we know from that work is that for praise to be effective, you want to focus on effort. So you don't want to praise qualities. You're so smart. You're working really hard is a really different thing than you're so smart, even though you may feel like both of those things. Most of us tend to you're so smart or you're so fast, you're the best. So you want to try to avoid those and really praise effort that the child or the adult or the teenager is giving. I see you're really working really hard. You want to be uber specific. Okay. So I mean, super specific. Jobs, good job is not uber specific. Also, kids don't have jobs, and having a job is like a really abstract concept that typically doesn't develop until kids are about 8, 9, 10. So if your kids are younger than that, or if they're having a hard time and stressed out and older than that, it's sort of like something that we say as adults that doesn't really match where their brain is at. So I want you to say the thing that they're doing super specifically. Wow, you're waiting really quietly. I see that you're buttoning your shirt. Wow. Okay, so you also want to praise things that are on the edge. So if you praise something that they know how to do, then it's not genuine, and they're going to feel that because your kids are so attuned to you, right? They're way better than adults are at sort of making an assessment based on the feeling. So, so you're going to be super specific. You're going to praise effort. And here's the big one: 100 times a day. So that's an awful lot of praise. Okay. So you can't overpraise your child. So you're trying to do this really often. One way to do it, if it feels like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that to 100 times a day? That's a lot of times an hour. Excuse me, is to do it as though you're a sportscaster. Okay. So you're just going to almost narrate what's happening. Now you're walking towards the shoe basket. I see you opening the drawer to get the forks out. Oh, great. You're setting the table. Okay, so you're just following them around, and you're going to have to modulate your voice. Okay, so 12-year-old is going to be like, why are you talking like that? But I will say we had a super sweet moment with a teenager in this last class. Mom was with a teenager when we had all those blackouts. We were painting rocks outside, and the mom was just noticing, like, wow, you're like mixing the colors and drawing this beautiful thing. So she was doing the sportscaster sort of narration. And the girl, I think she's like 13, says, Mom, why are you being so weird? And mom says, what do you mean? She says, well, you're not usually this nice. And it's funny, right? But it's also true that we fall into these patterns with our kids where we get really frustrated and they're the frustrating kid and we're constantly frustrated. So praise is a way to break that. And sometimes we say that humans need both rain and sunshine in order to grow. Or plants need both rain and sunshine, so do humans, right? They need the constructive criticism sometimes, but they also need a lot of sunlight and a lot of positive reinforcement. The other thing about praise is that it should be given within 2 seconds of the thing that the child did positively. That's pretty fast. And what that means is that you need to already be in it. So you can't be across the room. You got to be close. Usually we say within hugging distance. I also think it's super powerful for you to sealed with a kiss. Doesn't have to be a kiss, but sealed with some kind of affectionate touch. And your child, or you can experiment and see what works best for your child. For some kids, it's a high five. For some kids, it's a hug. Some kids like really deep pressure, but sealing the praise with some really sweet, affectionate, positive touch is really good for your child. So some children who tend towards under arousal, it's like light. Other kids like really deep pressure, so you can play around with that. But praising effort 100 times a day. Making sure that it's immediate, which means you're in hugging distance and it's like within 2 seconds. Okay, you can praise anything and you can always start just by praising the shards. I would encourage you to take like a determined amount of time, like an afternoon or a day if you like are that brave. And just focus on only praising your child and see what happens. So you can give directions, but reduce directions to 20%. And then 80% of everything that comes out of your mouth is going to be praise. Okay. And just notice kind of what happens for your children when you do that. So it's been absolutely wonderful to be together tonight. You'll get an email from me later tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, about next steps. If we would love to see any of you all in the class. We also offer coaching, but since we have these classes launching, they're so useful. We've got one online. If you are in the Bay Area, though, I would super encourage you to take it in person. I think that's really, really useful. There'll be a discount code that comes in the email. So we've got some spots open in all of those classes, and we would love to see you. We've got some other events coming up. There'll be a summer series this summer, and some other stuff. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and on Facebook and all the rest. We super appreciate you being here with us tonight. Bye, you guys.